The house she lived in, the startup her husband built, and the trust fund she thought would secure her children's future. All gone in 48 hours. But I'm getting ahead of myself. There's a particular kind of silence that settles over a room when someone you love looks at you with contempt. It's not the absence of sound, it's the presence of something far heavier. That's what I felt on my 65th birthday, standing in the corner of the Lakeview Country Club's grand ballroom, watching my daughter Emma laugh with her husband's colleagues as if I didn't exist. I'd arrived exactly on time. 7 p.m., just as the invitation specified. Though invitation is perhaps too generous a word for the text message I'd received 3 days prior. Birthday dinner at the club. 7 p.m., Saturday. Try to dress appropriately this time, Dad. I wore my best suit. The navy one I'd bought 15 years ago for Emma's college graduation. It still fit, though the fabric had worn thin at the elbows. I'd polished my shoes until they shone. When I caught my reflection in the club's gilded mirrors, I saw what everyone else probably saw. An old man trying too hard. Gray hair that refused to lay flat. Weathered hands that betrayed 40 years of factory work, even though I'd retired 5 years ago. A man out of place among tech entrepreneurs and their wives dripping in jewelry I could supposedly never afford. Emma spotted me first. I watched her face do something complicated. A flash of annoyance, quickly masked by a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She crossed the room with the purposeful stride she'd learned in her years climbing the corporate ladder. "Dad, you made it," she air-kissed near my cheek without actually touching me. "Come on, I'll introduce you to some people." Some people turned out to be a cluster of men and women in their 30s, all holding expensive cocktails and discussing market valuations with the casual confidence of those who'd never known financial insecurity. At the center stood Emma's husband, Marcus Chen, 38, founder and CEO of NeuralSync Technologies. I'd read about him in TechCrunch. The article called him a visionary. Emma called him her upgrade from the modest life she'd grown up with. "Everyone, this is my father." Emma's voice had that bright, hollow quality people use when they're performing politeness. Dad worked at the Johnson Steel factory for 40 years. He's retired now. The way she said it, like an apology. Marcus turned, and his handshake was firm in that aggressive way of men who've learned to dominate every interaction. "Good to meet you, sir. Emma's told me all about you." The old school work ethic, right? Punch the clock, collect the pension. Different world from what we do, but hey, somebody's got to keep the factories running. The group chuckled. Polite, meaningless sounds. "Actually," I said quietly, "the factory closed 8 years ago. Most of it moved overseas." Right. Tough break. Marcus was already looking past me, scanning for someone more interesting. But that's the thing about the old economy versus what we're building now. We're creating the future. Innovation. Disruption. No offense, but standing at an assembly line for 40 years, I mean, that's survival, not success. Emma laughed. Actually laughed at that. The sound hit me like a physical blow. "Marcus is being modest," she said to the group, her hand on her husband's arm. "NeuralSync just closed a Series C funding round. $80 million. Can you imagine, Dad? 80 million. That's more than you made in your entire career." I could imagine it quite clearly, actually. But I said nothing. "My father," Emma continued, and there was something cruel creeping into her voice now, something I'd never heard before, used to tell me that hard work was all that mattered. Just put in your hours, be reliable, and you'll be fine. God, I'm so glad I didn't listen to that advice. Where would I be? Living in some tiny house, worrying about bills, driving a 10-year-old car, like Dad, someone said. I didn't catch who. The words just floated out from the group, casual and cutting. More laughter. Marcus raised his glass. "No offense, sir, but Emma's right. She broke the cycle. That's what I love about her. She didn't settle for that kind of life. She wanted more. She deserves more." I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. The designer dress that cost more than a month of what my pension paid. The diamond earrings Marcus had given her for their anniversary. The confidence that comes from never having to check a price tag or worry about whether the electricity bill would clear. "Emma," I said softly, Can we talk? Just for a moment? Dad, we're in the middle of celebrating. Can it wait? I suppose it can. I stayed for dinner. They'd seated me at the far end of the table, away from the important guests. I ate in silence while conversations swirled around me about IPOs and stock options and vacation homes in Aspen. Emma gave a speech thanking everyone for coming to celebrate her father's birthday, but she spent more time talking about how far she'd come from her humble beginnings than anything about me. When dessert came, Marcus stood up. "One more toast," he said, slightly drunk now. "To Emma's old man. You know, my own father built a successful software company in the 90s. Left me and my brother a hell of a legacy. I always wondered what it would be like to come from simpler circumstances, to have to build everything from scratch like Emma did. It's impressive, really. She's a self-made woman." He raised his glass toward me. The table joined him. I sat there, their charity disguised as respect, and felt something inside me go very quiet and very still. I didn't make a scene. I thanked them for the lovely evening, kissed Emma on the cheek she allowed it this time, barely, and drove home to my small ranch house in the suburbs. The one Emma had mentioned, with such dismissive pity. The house she didn't know I'd bought with cash 30 years ago, when I'd made my first successful investment. The next morning, Sunday, I sat in my study. The room Emma had never bothered to really look at when she visited. The walls lined with books on venture capital, market analysis, and emerging technologies. The filing cabinet containing 3 decades of investment records. The laptop connected to accounts she'd never known existed. I made a phone call first, then another, then several more. By Sunday evening, the first domino fell. Emma called at 9 p.m. Her voice was strained. "Dad, something weird is happening. The management company that owns our house just sent an eviction notice. They're claiming the lease was terminated. There has to be some mistake." "That's terrible," I said. "What will you do?" "I don't know. Marcus is on the phone with our lawyer right now. This is insane. We've never missed a payment. The notice says the property owner exercised a termination clause in the lease agreement. Who does that? Who kicks out tenants who pay on time? Someone who owns the property and wants it back, I suppose." "This isn't funny, Dad. We have to be out in 30 days. "I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're resourceful. You said so yourself last night." There was a long pause. "Is there something you're not telling me?" "Get some rest, sweetheart. I'm sure everything will work out." I hung up before she could respond. Monday morning brought the second wave. Marcus Chen discovered that Neural Sync Technologies Series C, funding around the $80 million he'd bragged about, had a problem. The lead investor, a firm called Gilded Vengeance, had backed out. The money was gone. All of it. What Marcus didn't know was that Gilded Vengeance was one of 7 venture capital firms I'd founded over the past 25 years. Each one operated independently, managed by bright young partners I'd mentored and funded. None of them bore my name. Most people in the tech world had never heard of me. I liked it that way. I'd been investing in startups since the early 2000s, when a kid from Stanford pitched me his idea for social networking software in a coffee shop. I'd given him $100,000 from what was left of my factory wages and some smart stock picks. That $100,000 turned into $47 million when his company sold to Facebook. I'd rolled those earnings into more investments, then more, then more. For decades, I'd lived quietly, modestly, not out of necessity, but out of preference. I'd learned early on that wealth attracts the wrong kinds of attention. It changes how people see you, how they treat you. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not what I had. Emma's mother had known, before she passed. She'd understood why I kept working at the factory even after we didn't need the income, why I drove old cars and wore worn suits. "You're protecting yourself," she'd said once, "but someday you might need to protect our daughter from herself." I hadn't understood what she meant then. Marcus called me Monday afternoon. His voice was tight, with barely controlled panic. "I need to talk to you about something. Can you meet me?" We met at a quiet diner near my house. Marcus looked like he hadn't slept. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed. "The funding fell through," he said, without preamble. $80 million, just gone. Meridian Ventures pulled out, claiming concerns about market conditions. But I know that's bullshit. Something else is going on. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate? It's a disaster. We've got runway for maybe 2 months. I've already had to let go of 20% of my staff. The board is talking about replacing me. He ran his hands through his hair. And now this thing with the house. Emma's freaking out. We can't find another place in our budget that isn't a massive downgrade. Perhaps you could look at something simpler. A modest home, like mine. He looked at me like I'd suggested living in a cardboard box. You don't understand. We have a certain standard. People expect things from us. Emma's friends, my colleagues. We can't just downgrade. Why not? Because that's not who we are. I took a sip of my coffee. Who are you, Marcus? I'm a CEO, a tech entrepreneur. I built something from nothing. Did you? What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just a question. He stared at me, something dawning in his eyes, suspicion mixing with confusion. Emma said you were just a factory worker, that you never made much money. Emma said a lot of things Saturday night. What are you saying? I'm saying that sometimes the people we dismiss as failures understand more than we think. He left, without finishing his coffee. Monday night, Emma called again. This time she was crying. Dad, everything is falling apart. Marcus's company is in trouble. We got the eviction notice officially served today. And now, her voice broke, my trust fund, the one you set up for me when I was born. The bank called and said it's being dissolved. Is that so? Dad, that was going to be for the kids' college, for emergencies. That was my safety net. How is this happening? Did you do this? The trust fund was set up with specific conditions, Emma. Do you remember what they were? What? No. It was years ago. When I turned 21, you said it was mine. Not quite. I said it would be yours, as long as you honored the family, as long as you remembered where you came from, as long as you treated the people who loved you with respect. Silence on the other end. Saturday night, I continued, my voice still calm, still quiet. You introduced me to your husband's friends as if I were something to be ashamed of. You laughed when he mocked the life I built. You told a room full of strangers that you were glad you didn't listen to my advice, didn't settle for that kind of life. The kind of life that fed you, clothed you, sent you to private school, and paid for your college education. Dad, I didn't mean the house you live in? I bought that property in 2008, during the crash, paid $800,000 in cash. I've been leasing it to you through a property management company for the past 3 years, well below market rate. You thought you were getting a deal from a faceless corporation. You were getting help from your father. I heard her sharp intake of breath. Marcus's company, Neural Sync Technologies. The Series C funding round from Meridian Ventures? That's my firm, Emma. I'm the lead investor who pulled out. Or rather, I'm the anonymous founding partner behind Meridian. I've funded 43 startups in the past 2 decades. 12 of them became unicorns. I've made more money than you can probably imagine. And I've lived in this small house, driven old cars, and worn the same suits because money was never the point. Why? Her voice was barely a whisper. Why would you do this to me? I haven't done anything to you. I've simply stopped doing things for you. There's a difference. The house, the funding, the trust fund, those were all gifts. Gifts I gave to a daughter I thought understood that love and respect matter more than bank accounts and country club memberships. I was wrong. So this is punishment? Because I hurt your feelings at a party? No, sweetheart. This is a lesson. One I should have taught you years ago. She hung up. Tuesday morning, Marcus called back. His voice was different now. Harder. You're Meridian's founding partner? You? Among other things. This is blackmail. You're destroying my company because your feelings got hurt. I'm withdrawing my investment because I no longer believe in the leadership. That's business, Marcus. You understand business, don't you? You're the visionary who explained to me that innovation and disruption matter more than old-fashioned values like loyalty and hard work. I could sue you. You could try. You'd lose. The investment agreement has clauses that give me considerable latitude in withdrawing support. My lawyers were very thorough. Why are you doing this? Because Saturday night, You stood in front of a room full of people and mocked the idea that hard work matters. You called 40 years of my life survival, not success. You made my daughter believe that the only thing worth respecting is money and status. And I realized I'd failed her by letting her believe those lies. So what do you want? An apology? You want us to grovel? I want you to understand that the measures of a person have nothing to do with how much money they have or how impressive their job title sounds. I want you to learn what Emma apparently forgot, that dignity and respect aren't things you buy or earn through achievements. They're things you give to others because you're decent enough to recognize their humanity. You're insane, perhaps, but I'm insane with enough resources to make life very difficult for people who mistake kindness for weakness. He hung up on me that time. Wednesday, things escalated. Emma showed up at my house. She didn't knock. She still had a key from years ago, and she used it, bursting into my kitchen where I was making lunch. How could you? She was furious, trembling with rage. Do you have any idea what you've done? Marcus had to lay off 60 more people today. 60 people who have families, mortgages, kids. They lost their jobs because you got your feelings hurt. I'm sorry those people lost their jobs, I said, meaning it. But Marcus made promises he couldn't keep. He spent money he didn't have. He built a company on my investment and then publicly mocked me for my life's work. Actions have consequences. You're being petty, cruel. Am I? Tell me, Emma, when was the last time you asked about my life? Not out of obligation, but genuine curiosity. When was the last time you visited me because you wanted to, not because it was my birthday or Christmas? She faltered. I've been busy. Too busy for your father. But not too busy to cash the checks I sent for your children's birthdays. Not too busy to accept the anonymous donations that paid off your credit card debt 3 years ago. Not too busy to live in a house I subsidized or benefit from a trust fund I built over 25 years. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. You wanted to believe you'd achieved everything on your own, that you'd escaped the life I lived, that you were better than me. She sank into a kitchen chair, and for the first time since Saturday, I saw my daughter instead of the person she'd been performing. Her eyes were red. Her expensive manicure was chipped. She looked young again and lost. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Dad. For which part? For being ashamed of me? For letting your husband insult me? For laughing along with people who thought my life was worthless? Or for only apologizing now that you know I have money? She flinched like I'd slapped her. That's not fair, isn't it? If I'd stayed silent Saturday night, if I'd just absorbed the mockery and gone home and done nothing, would you be here now? Would you be apologizing? She didn't answer. We both knew the truth. I sat down across from her. I loved your mother very much. When she got sick, I spent every penny I'd saved to get her the best treatment. It didn't work. She died anyway. And before she did, she made me promise something. She made me promise to take care of you, but also to make sure you grew up understanding what really matters. I thought I'd done that. I thought I'd raised a woman who valued people over possessions, who understood that respect isn't bought. You did, Dad. You did raise me that way. I got lost somewhere. You married a man who values all the wrong things. And instead of standing up for what you knew was right, you became someone I didn't recognize. I can change. We can change. Marcus can learn. I shook my head. This isn't about Marcus. It's about you. You chose to laugh Saturday night. You chose to be embarrassed by your own father instead of defending him. You chose to value money over love. I made a mistake. You made a choice. And choices have consequences. She was crying now, really crying, in a way I hadn't seen since she was a little girl who'd fallen and scraped her knee. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would all be okay. But the larger part of me, the part that had spent 40 years building something real, only to watch her dismiss it in front of strangers, remained still. What happens now? She asked. Now? Now? You figure out who you are when you don't have money to hide behind. You and Marcus find a modest apartment. You live within your means. You learn that happiness doesn't come from country club memberships and designer clothes. Maybe you remember what I tried to teach you when you were young. And if we do, if we learn, what then? I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the neighbors' kids were playing basketball in the driveway. Normal kids, normal lives. Then maybe we talk again. Really talk. Not about money or houses or investments. About family. About what matters. I love you, Dad. I know you do. But love isn't just words. It's action. It's respect. It's showing up for people even when they can't give you anything in return. She left after that. I watched her drive away in the BMW Marcus had leased, another thing they couldn't really afford but had gotten to maintain appearances. Thursday brought silence. No calls, no visits. I spent the day in my study, reviewing investment portfolios and talking with my partners about opportunities in renewable energy. Life went on. Friday afternoon, something unexpected happened. Marcus appeared at my door. Alone this time. He looked different. Smaller somehow. Deflated. "Can we talk?" he asked. I let him in. We sat in my living room. He looked around. Really looked. Perhaps for the first time. At the worn but comfortable furniture. The photographs on the walls, Emma as a child. My late wife. Moments of quiet happiness. The bookshelf filled with classics and philosophy texts alongside the investment guides. "I owe you an apology," he said. "A real one. Not because you have money and I need you to save my company, but because I was an arrogant asshole who said cruel things about a life I didn't understand. Go on. I've spent the last 4 days scrambling, trying to save Neural Sync, trying to find a new place to live, trying to keep Emma from falling apart. And somewhere in all that panic, I realized something. My father, the successful software guy I mentioned, he died when I was 25. Left me and my brother $5 million each. I never had to struggle. I never had to work a factory job or worry about making rent. I took that money, invested it in my education, in networking, in building connections, and then I had the audacity to call myself self-made. He rubbed his face. The truth is, I've never built anything from scratch. Not really. And when I met Emma, I assumed her father must be like mine, either successful and she was running from his shadow, or a failure she was ashamed of. I never considered there might be another category. Someone who had more than me but chose to live differently. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked me who I was. On Monday, at the diner. And I've been thinking about that question ever since. Without Neural Sync, without the CEO title, without the money, who am I? What have I actually accomplished that matters? That's a good question. Have you found an answer? Not yet. But I'm starting to understand that the answer isn't going to be found in a boardroom or a funding round. I studied him for a long moment. What happened to Neural Sync? We're probably done. I can't find replacement funding. The board forced me out yesterday. They're bringing in new leadership to try to salvage what's left. But honestly, I built the whole company on hype and promises. Maybe it deserves to fail. Maybe. Emma's devastated. Not because of the money, I think. Because she hurt you. Because she realized she'd become someone she doesn't like. She barely speaks to me. She just sits in our temporary apartment and cries. Where are you staying? A friend's place. 2 bedrooms. Nothing fancy. Emma's friend from college. The one she used to make fun of for not being ambitious enough. Turns out that friend is happy, has a stable life, and was willing to help us when we had nowhere else to go. Funny how that works. I didn't say anything. I'm not asking you to restore the funding, Marcus said. I'm not asking you to give Emma back the trust fund or let us live in that house. I know I don't deserve any of that. I just wanted you to know that I get it now, what you were trying to teach us. And I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to understand. It didn't take losing everything, I said quietly. It took losing the illusion that possessions and titles are what make someone valuable. The lesson isn't about suffering, it's about recognizing what actually matters. He nodded. Emma wants to see you, not to ask for anything, just to see you. Is that okay? Tell her to come by Sunday. We'll have dinner. Nothing fancy, just dinner. He left. I sat in my living room as the evening light faded, thinking about choices and consequences, and whether I'd done the right thing. Sunday came. Emma arrived at 5 p.m., exactly on time. She dressed simply jeans and a sweater I recognized from years ago. No jewelry except her wedding ring. She looked nervous. "Hi, Dad." "Hello, sweetheart." I'd made pot roast, her favorite from childhood. We ate at my small kitchen table, not the formal dining room. For a while, we didn't talk about Saturday, or the house, or any of it. We talked about small things. She told me about my grandson's science project. I told her about the book I was reading. Normal conversation. Finally, over coffee, she said, "I've been thinking about something Mom used to say, that the richest person isn't the one with the most money, but the one who needs the least." She was wise. I didn't understand it when she said it. I thought it was just something poor people told themselves to feel better about being poor. But you're not poor, are you? You never were. Poverty and wealth are relative. I had enough. More than enough. But I didn't need people to know that to feel secure. Why not? Why hide it? Because I wanted to be loved for who I was. Because I'd seen what money does to families, how it creates hierarchy and resentment and competition. I wanted you to grow up normal, to understand the value of work, of genuine relationships, of living within your means. You succeeded. For a while. But then I met Marcus, and his world was so glamorous and exciting, and I got caught up in it. I started measuring my worth by his success, by what we could buy, and who we knew, and how impressed people were when they heard his job title. And now? Now I'm living in a borrowed apartment with a husband who's questioning everything about his life. And weirdly, I'm happier than I've been in years. Not because losing things is good, but because I'm remembering what I'd forgotten. That my best memories aren't from country club parties. They're from Sunday dinners like this. From being with people who love me, not what I have. I reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm sorry I had to teach you that lesson so harshly. I'm sorry I needed to learn it that way." We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only exists between people who truly know each other. "What happens now?" she asked eventually. "With Marcus's company, with the house, with everything. What do you want to happen?" I want to start over. Really start over. Marcus is looking for a regular job. Not as a CEO, just as an engineer. We're going to find a small place we can actually afford. I'm going to go back to work. Take a position that doesn't require 80-hour weeks. We're going to live like normal people. That sounds good. I want my kids to know their grandfather. The real one. Not the version I was pretending existed, the struggling factory worker I was embarrassed by. The actual you, who spent 40 years building something meaningful while staying true to his values. I'd like that very much. She squeezed my hand. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Would you ever consider, not taking back everything completely, but maybe advising Marcus? Teaching him how to build something real? He's actually brilliant when he's not performing for investors. But he doesn't know how to be authentic. He doesn't know how to create value instead of just chasing valuations. I considered this. If he's willing to learn, if he's willing to accept that, I might tell him things he doesn't want to hear. He is. We both are. Then we'll see. But Emma, understand something. If I help, if I choose to restore some of what I took away, it won't be because you apologized or because I feel guilty. It will be because you've actually changed. Because you've shown me through your actions, not just words, that you understand what matters. I understand. And it won't happen quickly. You need to spend time living without safety nets, learning to appreciate what you have instead of always reaching for more. Can you do that? Yes. Then we'll revisit this conversation in 6 months. We'll see where you are, who you've become, and we'll talk about what comes next. She smiled, really smiled, for the first time since Saturday. Thank you, Dad. Don't thank me yet. The next 6 months won't be easy. Good. I don't want easy anymore. I want real. She left as the sun was setting. I stood at my door and watched her drive away in the 10-year-old Honda she'd borrowed from her friend. As I closed the door, I thought about my late wife and the promise I'd made her. To take care of our daughter, to make sure she understood what mattered. I thought I'd failed that promise when I heard Emma laugh on Saturday night. But maybe I'd been succeeding all along. Maybe the lesson just took longer to deliver than I'd expected. 6 months passed. Emma and Marcus found a small apartment in a modest neighborhood. They cut their expenses by 70%. Marcus took a senior engineering position at a stable mid-sized company. Emma went back to work part-time as a consultant. They paid their bills, saved a little, and spent their weekends with their kids at parks instead of country clubs. They visited me every other Sunday. We had dinner, played with my grandchildren, talked about life. Slowly, I watched my daughter rediscover herself. The person she'd been before she'd gotten lost in the pursuit of appearing successful. On the 6-month anniversary of that terrible birthday party, I invited Emma and Marcus to my study for the first time. "I want to show you something," I said. I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out folders. Investment records spanning 3 decades, copies of founding documents for 7 venture capital firms, bank statements showing accounts they'd never known existed. "This is who I am," I told them, "not a retired factory worker. A person who worked at a factory while building something else on the side. Someone who invested wisely, took calculated risks, and created real value. The factory job was never about the money. It was about staying grounded, about remembering where I came from, and not losing myself in wealth." Marcus studied the documents, his eyes widening. This is incredible. Some of these companies, I know these companies. You were an early investor in Cloudbase? In QuantumNet? These are billion-dollar successes. Some succeeded. Many failed. That's the nature of investing. You win some, you lose some. But you keep going because you believe in building something real. "Why are you showing us this now?" Emma asked. "Because you've proven over the past 6 months that you learned the lesson. You didn't complain. You didn't ask for handouts. You built a life that makes you happy, not one that impresses other people. You're ready to understand what I do and why I do it." I pulled out one more folder. "Marcus, you asked about advising. Here's my proposal. I have seed funding available for a new venture. Nothing as flashy as NeuralSync. Something smaller, more focused on solving real problems instead of chasing unicorn valuations. If you're interested, I'll back you. Not as a silent partner, but as an active mentor. You'll report to me. You'll build the company my way, sustainably, authentically, with values that matter. It won't make you rich overnight, but it might make you successful in ways that actually count." Marcus looked at Emma. She nodded. "I'm in," he said. "Under one condition." "What's that?" "That you let me pay rent on whatever property we end up in. Market rate. No family discounts. I need to know I can actually support my family, not just coast on your generosity." I smiled. "Deal." To Emma, I said, "The trust fund I dissolved? I've set up a new one. Same amount, but with different conditions. It's not for you. It's for your children's education. And the only way they can access it is if they demonstrate the values we're talking about. Not grades, not achievements. Character, compassion, respect for others regardless of circumstances." She had tears in her eyes. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just pass on what you've learned. Teach your children what your mother taught you, what I tried to teach you. That money is a tool, not a measure of worth. That respect is earned through character, not purchased with success. That the richest life is one filled with genuine relationships, not impressive possessions." That evening, we sat together in my living room, 3 generations of family, eating pizza and playing board games with my grandchildren. At one point, my grandson asked me what I did for work. "I invest in people," I told him. "I find people with good ideas and good hearts, and I help them build something meaningful." "Are you rich?" he asked with the innocent directness of children. "In the ways that matter?" "Yes, very rich." Emma caught my eye across the room and smiled. The house she lived in, the startup her husband built, and the trust fund she thought would secure her children's future. I'd taken them all away in 48 hours. And in the 6 months since, we'd built something better, something real. Not a fairy tale ending where everyone lives happily ever after in restored luxury, but something more valuable. A family that understood what actually mattered. A daughter who'd found herself again. A son-in-law learning to measure success by impact rather than income. Grandchildren growing up with values that would serve them better than any trust fund ever could. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is taking away the things they think they need, so they can discover what they actually want. And sometimes the silence that follows a cruel remark isn't weakness or cowardice. It's the quiet calculation of a father who loves his daughter enough to let her fall, so she can learn to stand on her own 2 feet. I'd spent 40 years building wealth in the shadows. But the greatest return on investment wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in moments like this, sitting in my modest living room, surrounded by family who loved me for who I was, not what I had. The factory had closed 8 years ago, but the lessons I'd learned there about hard work, about dignity, about the difference between survival and success, those lessons had never been more valuable. Marcus's new company, which we'd named Practical Solutions, launched 3 months later. It wasn't sexy. It didn't promise to disrupt industries or revolutionize technology. It simply created software that helped small businesses manage their operations more efficiently. Boring, practical, profitable. It would never make headlines in TechCrunch, but it employed 23 people who earned fair wages and had good benefits. It solved real problems for real people. It built wealth slowly, sustainably, honestly, just like I had, all those years ago at the factory while I invested on the side. The car Emma drives now is 7 years old. The apartment they rent is comfortable but modest. Their children go to good public schools, not exclusive private academies. On weekends, they pack sandwiches and spend days at the park instead of spending hundreds at trendy restaurants. And every other Sunday, they come here, to my small house with its worn furniture and overgrown garden. We eat together, talk together, laugh together. I teach my grandchildren chess. Emma and I cook her mother's recipes. Marcus and I discuss business, but we also discuss philosophy, history, what makes a life well lived. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed silent that Saturday night. If I'd let the mockery slide, accepted the disrespect, maintained the illusion that I was exactly what they thought I was. I think I know the answer. Emma would have continued down that path, measuring her worth by her possessions, teaching her children that success means impressing strangers. Marcus would have chased his next funding round, never questioning whether he was building something meaningful or just something flashy. And I would have spent my remaining years watching my family drift further from everything I valued, too conflict-averse to intervene, too afraid of being seen as petty to enforce boundaries. Instead, I'm sitting here on a Sunday afternoon, listening to my daughter and son-in-law discuss their modest dreams for the future while my grandchildren play in the yard. We're not rich in the way most people define rich, but we have something that no amount of money can buy. We have each other. We have respect. We have integrity. We have what matters. And 40 years from now, when I'm long gone and Emma is the age I am now, I hope she'll sit in whatever home she's built and tell her grandchildren about the birthday party where everything changed, about the father who loved her enough to teach her a hard lesson, about the difference between appearing successful and actually being successful. I hope she'll tell them that the measure of a person isn't what they own or what title they hold. It's what they do when no one's watching. It's how they treat people who can't give them anything in return. It's whether they have the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it costs them something. That's what I learned in 40 years at the factory. That's what I practiced in 3 decades of investing. That's what I tried to pass on to my daughter. And on that terrible Saturday night at the Lakeview Country Club, when she laughed at my life and mocked my choices, I had to decide. Would I be the father who enabled her delusions, or the father who loved her enough to let her face reality? I chose love, the hard kind, the kind that doesn't always feel good in the moment but builds character over time. The silence I maintained that night wasn't surrender, it was strategy. It was a father's determination to save his daughter from herself, even if she hated him for it, even if, for a while, she thought he was the villain. Because real love isn't about making people comfortable. It's about making them better. And sometimes, the greatest gift a father can give his child is the gift of consequences. The opportunity to learn that actions matter, that respect must be earned, and that happiness can't be bought, only built, one authentic choice at a time. That's the legacy I'm leaving behind. Not money, not property, not an empire of companies, or a fortune in the bank. A lesson, simple but profound. Be true to your values, even when the world tells you they're worthless. Because in the end, values are all we really own. Everything else is just borrowed time.